Me. Me.
The technology. Okay, so hello everybody, and welcome to the Women in Research Ireland October online event. It's brilliant to have you all. So my name is Martha Gullman, and I'm the co-founder of Women in Research Ireland. We're a volunteer-run registered charity founded in Dublin in 2017. Our mission is to build a community which unites women and other underrepresented groups. We also look to maintain a platform of unheard voices to discuss issues and create change. We've been hosting monthly events until March of this year, but unfortunately due to the pandemic, we have switched to online events. Please have a look at our Twitter and Instagram accounts and follow us for any future events and collaborations. So this event is really exciting, and it wouldn't have been possible without the support of the Royal Society of Chemistry, Inclusion and Diversity Fund 2020. So if you're tweeting about this event, can you please use the hashtag #WearyBreathe Twitter. So just a quick hello to the co-organisers of this event, Dr. Joanne Kenny, who is a co-director, Dr. Susan FedEx, who's the other co-director, Dr. Cathy Corcoran, who's our treasurer, and of course, Dr. Cathy Scanlon, who is the breathwork coach. And also just a quick hello to our committee as well. So today's event is really unique collaboration between us and Dr. Cathy Scanlon, aka the breathwork coach. So before becoming a breathwork coach, Dr. Cathy Scanlon worked as an academic research scientist, specializing in neuroimaging in both neurology and psychiatry. Cathy completed her PhD at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland and subsequently worked as both a postdoc and a lecturer in University College San Francisco, National University of Ireland Galway, and King's College London. Cathy has trained in many forms of breathwork while living in Costa Rica, New York, and California. We will be practicing pranayama breathwork in this workshop. So if you have any questions for Cathy, pop them into the chat and we will answer them after Cathy's talk. I will now hand over to Cathy.
Thanks so much, Martha, and to Joanne and other Cathy and Susan. I'm really delighted to be speaking with you today. So I really appreciate the girls' support and excitement about bringing breathwork to all you guys. So this is an hour and a half workshop, and what we're going to do is, for the first portion, which would be like a half an hour or 40 minutes ish, I'll just give you I'll just chat. I'll talk to you about my background and what brought me from academia into breathwork. And that kind of story is kind of interesting and may resonate with some people of why I even got into breathwork and why I'm bringing it to you guys today. So after that portion, we'll take some questions. So if anyone wants to ask any questions at that point, we'll open it up to questions. And then we're actually going to stop the recording of this, and then we'll do the breathwork class after that, kind of separately. So it'll be two sides. And we'll let you go to the toilet in the middle if you want. So yeah, as Martha said, I was an academic research scientist for about 6 years after my PhD, and I worked in various labs and countries, specifically in neuroimaging. My undergrad was as a engineer, so I approached neuroimaging. I worked in departments of psychiatry and neurology, but mostly came from a neuroimaging engineering perspective, particularly in MRI. So I'll get straight into it. My overwhelm started in my final year of my PhD, and I really wanted to make this kind of talk about a lot of the stresses and strains that can come with being an academic scientist, but as you'll hear a little bit about, just generally how we can sometimes treat ourselves in terms of stress and overwhelm, and how potentially we can start to tackle that after. I guess sometimes it's just the journey you're on helps you kind of, sorry, I'm just going to plug myself in, helps you understand a little bit more about yourself. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how I discovered breathwork and what that's helped me with in terms of my anxiety and stress today. So, you know, like most people, I'm sure, my PhD was very stressful. Well, it wasn't really, actually. I really enjoyed it for the most part, but it was that final year that I think was the first time in my life I really felt overwhelmed in terms of what that can mean when you're doing something so high stress. I didn't know how to cope. I really didn't. I was trying to finish my PhD here in Dublin, and when I finished it, when I had corrections, I had already started my postdoc in San Francisco at a huge and wonderful research lab over there, but was still trying to finish my thesis while doing this new job in this new country. I didn't know how to cope with the stress I was under because I'd never experienced that much stress before. And when you don't know how to cope, you generally don't. Well, you can break, but for a long time, it was a case of just a lot of avoidance and a lot of procrastination and a lot of figuring out ways to avoid the feelings I was having. For me, a lot of the stress and strain I felt was to do with no real specific deadlines, except for when my money ran out, or no one really holding me accountable except myself. And I used to beat myself a lot up about not finishing things when I set these internal deadlines that I couldn't do because they were unrealistic. And I had support. I had people I could go to if I had a problem, but I was definitely of that personality, didn't want to go for help. I wanted to get the answers myself. I wanted to solve these things myself. And the answers I was getting weren't really that helpful. I did end up seeing a therapist while I was in San Francisco. At that time, it was about 10 years ago. It was definitely very socially acceptable to have a therapist in San Francisco. But I went with the one idea that you're going to help me finish this thesis. I just need help. I need someone to hold my hand while I do this. But he actually did open me up to a big world of why I was behaving like I was, which was amazing. One of the biggest issues I had, as I said, avoidance and procrastination was my thing. I know other people have other things, but I was always good at my job, and I always looked fine, but I generally wasn't underneath, and we were living with this constant anxiety and stress and not feeling good enough all the time, because I was setting ridiculous goals for myself that weren't really achievable, and then I didn't hit them, I'd feel really bad about myself. So I definitely felt like that for quite a long time. Long periods of feeling kind of this dread of not being able to finish my thesis, or I have to get it finished by this date, I should do this, I need to do all these things, everybody else seems to be coping except me. That was many years of feeling like that, but not really showing it either, because I kind of felt like I should be able to cope because everybody else is. Actually, it wasn't until after I finally finished my thesis, submitted it, probably 6 months to a year later, starting to feel a little bit better. I started telling people, yeah, I nearly, I had to see a therapist, I really wasn't coping. And I got a lot of, oh yeah, me too, but very whispered me too's. I know things have changed a lot in academia since I've been there, but I know I felt a lot of shame in my feeling that I couldn't cope. I used to get horrible back spasms as well. I had broken my back before I started my PhD, fractured my spine, and I had terrible issues with this. Only when I got stressed, only when I was up late at night trying to finish things, I'd just be like completely tense. And I would get back spasms every time I got too stressed. I had endless colds, always having to take time off work for a cold or another back spasm, but I didn't know how to tell myself, I think I need a break. Or if I did take a break, it was going on holidays with the girls and going partying and having a good time and feeling, that's not the break I needed. I needed something else. Also, everything about self-care would go out the window when I was feeling shit about myself, just really, really feeling that I wasn't able for this, which I'm sure resonates with a lot of people. I ended up leaving academia not necessarily quite suddenly, in terms of I just couldn't do it anymore. I had this endless feeling like this all the time, and I was like, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to always feel like I'm not in control of how I feel or my life or where this is going. Not to say everyone should leave academia, because I want to talk a little bit more about what happened next. I left academia because I felt like I don't want to feel in this way. And when I left, I felt very free. I felt very happy in my decision. I felt like it was the first time I really listened to myself. kind of retrained. I was an engineer, so I kind of fell into doing software engineering in industry, really, really thankfully and luckily. I very quickly became a technical director of a design agency in London, which was an amazing job with amazing people. And I was really good at this too. Like all of us here, I've no doubt everyone's really good at what they do. I was really good at that. But I was abandoning myself to be really good at it. My clients were always happy. I had a team of people that were mostly happy, always trying to mitigate potential issues that were coming down the line. But the problem I was having every time any kind of pressure mounted, completely abandoned myself. I have to do this, I have to do that, I should do this. I was waking up first thing in the morning with to-do lists rushing through my head, writing down all the things I need to do. I was never giving myself a second to stop and go, well, what do I need? Maybe I need to eat healthy, I need to exercise, I need to support myself for when I feel stressed. I didn't even know what any of that meant. So I didn't. And again, I fell back into the same pattern. So regardless of where I was working, whether it was a big lab, whether it was small labs, academia, non-academic, I was starting to realize, oh, this is not an academic problem. This is a how I'm treating myself problem. So yeah, like I said, I was had to shoulds. I mean, that whole me panicking, I felt like if I didn't do what I needed to do that week, or I upset a client, or I didn't get a paper to my supervisor by a certain date, I would just feel terrible. So I would do all the things to make sure that was never going to happen. So I ended up being really good at my job, but at the expense of myself and my, to be honest, my sanity, because everything was about work. Everything was always like mitigating issues well before they happened, but not realizing I would need a break. And the same thing would happen. I would start getting back spasms again. And there was a period of time between those two high pressure jobs where I didn't have any back pain whatsoever. So I'd get back spasms again. I'd get colds. I'd have to stay at home. And I saw this cycle starting again. And I was like, all right, whoa, this is not okay. I don't want to live like this. And I think that was the biggest thing. I didn't want to live like this anymore. I didn't want to live like I didn't have control over my life, how I felt, how my day was going to go. And I was at the mercy of my to-do list or someone else's to-do list. So, you know, I was still showing up in the same way regardless when pressure happened. I would abandon myself. I wasn't kind to myself. I wasn't listening to myself. I wasn't listening to what my body needed. I was shoulding all the time. Well, I have to do this. I should do this. I can't leave academia. This is my life. This is who I am. I was shoulding, have tos. And I got absolutely sick of this. I didn't love myself at the time. I think I thought I did. And maybe I did a little, but I didn't love myself enough to say no, to listen to myself and what I needed. And continuing this cyclical pattern of not being okay. And you know what? I got sick of not being okay. And I think that's what happened. I was sick of it. When I started my postdocs after my PhD wobble, I did start meditating. I started looking for things to help me deal with my stress, and it really did open my eyes. I read everything, I tried all these different techniques, and I'm really glad I did. It started me on this path of realizing there's things we can do to help regulate our nervous system. So before I left my job as the technical director, I did end up wanting to start my own business because, again, I felt like I was always at the mercy of other people. It probably, again, I think I was looking outside of myself to fix what was going on. But as I kept jumping from thing to thing, the same patterns kept emerging. So obviously at this stage, I was like, okay, this is not working here. So I did start my own business. I had an idea for a business while I was in the agency I worked at to help startups hire their engineering teams. And I started doing that part-time, and I started doing it remotely because there were two things that were really important to me. Freedom in some capacity was important to me at that time when I started listening to myself a little bit more at that stage. I hadn't fully gotten there, but I did start listening to what I wanted. And one of those things was just a little bit more freedom on my life and how I show up. So I started this business. To be honest, I was both of those, that business, which was part-time, ended up making more money than I'd made in anything else. And of course, I got a lot of pushback from people being like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. The one after the academic leave was really tough because I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was doing. And I kept telling myself, when I know what it is I want to do, I'll leave. And of course, years passed and that I never figured it out. So I just left and life started working itself out once I started trusting myself a bit more. So I really wanted to do this business idea just from the capacity of wanted more control over my time and my life. And I did that, and it did work really well. And it wasn't necessarily a passion project, but it gave me what I needed at the time. I ended up moving to Costa Rica a number of years ago, absolutely on a whim. On a friend's invitation, I had started working remotely and part-time, and I was just going to visit her and hang out and work from there because I was remote and I had clients in London and New York at the time. That turned into a job offer from a medical startup that was based in Costa Rica. And I stayed there for 6 months. I came over and back to London, but I was mostly in Costa Rica for that time, which was wonderful. I'd wake up in the morning and do my my business work, which was a few hours in the morning, given the time difference that worked out. And then I would go and help this company just with their project management, some of their sales. It was pretty, it didn't turn out to be the job I was expecting it to be, but I was in Costa Rica and it was amazing. And this is where I discovered breathwork and also plant medicine. And these two things combined really, really helped me see what was really going on. I did a lot of breath work first. I did some plant medicine, and then what I realized was a lot of what I was missing was coming from the breath work. I want to talk a little bit about what that means in terms of what I got from it, but also what breath work can be used for. So a lot of times when we are looking for techniques to help us deal better with stress, that we're currently having. And that was, my experience with meditation pretty much up until maybe a year or two before that, before I got getting quite serious about it and going a little deeper. It was always like, what can I use to help me manage my current stress? Not changing my situation, not changing anything I'm doing, but I just want to lower those levels of cortisol or whatever, or adrenals, or whatever is going on or imbalance. I'm not going to change what's happening in my life, but I'm just going to want to bring that down. And how can I do that? However, if we don't start unpacking why we keep having these patterns, whether it's stress or overwhelm, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's just being in an angry mood. There's all sorts of patterns we can start to notice. And of course, we can use these techniques to help calm our body so that we can reset a little bit. But, we need to essentially understand what's going on. And for me, I really got to that stage where, like I said, I had enough and I wanted to understand why I wasn't trusting myself, why I wasn't listening to myself, why I kept abandoning myself every time somebody else's agenda was always more important than mine. And also, why don't I just feel good enough? And I think that was the core of a lot was what was going on for me. So these deeper exploratory techniques can help us go a bit deeper when we talk about breath work. Therapy, obvious talk therapy is another form of course, allowing ourselves to dig a little deeper and see what's there. But breath work and other techniques like this help us drop in a little deeper and start to shed some layers physically of what's going on. Like we hold tension and stress in our body, and using the breath to allow ourselves to let some of that go. So, it's based on the premise, and all this stuff is based on the premise. There's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing, I kept thinking there was something wrong with me. I had to change myself to be more confident, to be more worthy, to be better in some way. There's nothing wrong with us. We are fully whole. We are fully perfect. And it's just patterns and beliefs, systems that are just in the way of helping us connect with who we fully are. And if we just start letting those things fall away to the side, what's really there is already there. We are already confident. We're already, completely fine and not needing all these coping mechanisms if we start to allow them to unpack and fall away. And that's one thing that kind of blew my mind when I started realizing, going, oh, there's nothing wrong. The only thing that needs to change is getting through some of the thicket that's here, that's stopping us listening to ourselves. And I think it took me quite a long time to even find that voice that kind of told me what that I was enough, that I am whole, that there's nothing wrong with me and I'm absolutely fine. And once we start feeling that, these other things do start to drop away. We become a little bit more confident. Like, I'm pretty good at saying no now when I don't think things really suit me. And one thing to say was, when I left that job as a technical director in London, they hired 2 people to replace me. 2. So I was there stressed constantly because I wasn't doing, well, I was doing a good enough job because it was getting done. But at no stage did I stop and think, actually, I'm doing 2 people's jobs. This is not okay. You know, I shouldn't have to do 2 people's jobs. You know, now I think I would like to hope, if I was in that position again, I'm like, I think this is 2 people's job. We need to hire someone else. I never said that because I just kept taking the work and taking the work and taking the work. And I've no doubt a lot of people would resonate with that. And again, I kept thinking there was something wrong with me because I couldn't handle that amount of stress. It was 2 people's jobs. Of course, I couldn't handle the stress. That's crazy. A lot of people, other people may have just been able to say, this is not okay. So, you know, but that, I think this journey that I've been on has all been amazing for me to see that. And yes, maybe if I had all these understandings before I left academia, I never would have left, and maybe that would have been job. I do think personality wise, it wasn't necessarily quite a good fit for me, but I'm really, it's quite interesting. The journey I've been on has been so helpful to almost gather the evidence for me to understand why I was feeling the way I did. So self-trust is something I'm talking about, basically, is learning to trust ourselves again. In any capacity, we could feel absolutely fine. We still need stress relief in terms of just allowing tension to move from our bodies. But there's something in, and I'll explain a little bit more about how the breathwork works, but it does help us move out of this busy, overactive mind, turn off the mind for a moment so we can connect with ourselves and what is really there. And when I talk about self-trust, I talk about being able to stand with yourself, knowing what you value, knowing your own value. And if we don't know what we value, if we don't know what is important to us, how to check in with ourselves and ask these questions, going, is this all right? Does this feel okay with me? Do I want to do this? Or I'm just doing it because someone's telling me I have to do it. You know, then it can, if we don't have that, if we don't know how to check in with ourselves, if we don't know what our value is or what our values are, we're much easily swayed by other people's value systems. So other people know their values and they're just going to put it on us. And if we really know our value system and just make sure that links up with that other person, like, yeah, that's cool. That feels good to me too. But if we don't have that, we're often swayed by other people's value systems as well as by our own inner fears. And that's the have-tos and the shoulds. Well, society says I have to do this or I should do this. Like, you know, a lot of the things I did was, you know, frowned upon for sure, until I was getting successful at it. And then people were like, oh, that was a great move you made. But, you know, at the start, it never was. It was like, well, don't do those things. That's, you know, don't leave your career. Don't, you know, you should buy a house. You should get married. You should do all these things. And I was off living in Costa Rica at 37 years old, doing what the hell I wanted. And that felt good and it felt freeing and it felt like I was listening to myself again. So I discovered breathwork in Costa Rica and I trained as a breathwork coach. I moved to the US after that and worked and trained and built my practice over there. So I want to talk a little bit, before moving, I live here now, I live back in Dublin. I wanted to talk a little bit about what breathwork is, and then I'd love to take any questions you might have about it. So some people may have heard of breathwork before, some people may be completely new to what this is. So breathwork is a form of meditation. It is a deep meditation. So the way we breathe in a particular controlled pattern elicits an effect, a meditative effect. So, you may have heard of other controlled breathing techniques. That can be anything from box breathing. So you may have heard of just breathing in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. It's a great breathing technique just to allow the body to soften, allow the nervous system to start to unwind itself. And as well as, I would also recommend box breathing is fantastic. These are things you can do at your desk. You'll see when we do breath work, it's not something you could just do at your desk with lots of other people around. The other one I wanted to mention, if you are feeling stressed or overwhelmed or anxious, something that's really important to do when you're doing any of these breathing techniques is to breathe out for longer than you're breathing in. So you can breathe in for 4, but out for 6. Breathe in for 4 slow counts, and then breathe out for 6 slow counts. And that really does help the body soften and let it feel a little safe, so the body can feel safe and not continue to be feel as overwhelmed. And if we're really in it, that can be really hard. I get that. But even if we just set a timer and try to follow our breath for that time, that can be really helpful. So that's slightly different than what we're going to do today. What we're going to do today is breath work versus breathing techniques. So breath work, you may have heard of other forms of it if you've ever heard of the Wim Hof method, holotropic breath work, transformational breath work. There's 100 different names for these things. This type of breath work we're going to do is called pranayama breath work. If you have heard of holotropic breath work, it's definitely not as intense as that. It's not an intense a pattern of breathing. So it is a little bit more alongside kind of the Wim Hof style of breath work, but it's definitely not as I like to say it is a feminine approach. This particular style of breath work, pranayama breath work that I trained with David Elliott, who's well known in the US. It's a feminine approach. It's a gentler approach to getting to the same place. And where we're getting to essentially is breathing really, really deeply into our belly and to our chest. I'll show you in a minute. And we're basically overloading our body a little bit with air. And we do offset the balance of oxygen and O2 in our body in the same way we would do if we were going for a run. We're taking and breathing in a lot more than we breathe out. But when we're running and exercising, we're expending that energy by using our body. But when we're just lying down and breathing, we're going to start feeling some interesting things. You may feel a little lightheaded, you may feel tingly in your body. There's a lot of physicalness that's going to be happening when we do the breath, and I'll encourage you to stay breathing, stay with the breath as we come out of the mind and into the body. This is that thing where we're giving our mind a break. Our body starts to relax and let go. Our mind starts to rest and relax and let go. And in this space is that restful connection that we can have with ourselves again. Now, it's going to be a lot of people's first time doing this today. So this is just an exploratory, introductory breathwork today. Just feel into how your body feels. We'll just get out of the brain into the body for a little while. Experiment with how that feels. Usually you'll feel super relaxed and rested afterwards, because instead of meditating, where we're just sitting and watching the breath or saying a mantra, and it does help our body to relax, we're kind of almost pushing it a little forward. We're going to go, okay, we're going to get that meditative state, but we're going to have an action towards it. And this can be really helpful for anyone who's tried meditation and finds it too difficult, especially if we're feeling overwhelmed or stressed. It's quite difficult to sit and meditate when we're in that. It's pretty easy to meditate when we're not feeling stressed. So breathwork gives us a job to do, gives the mind a job to do. We're just focusing on breathing in this kind of odd pattern that I'm going to show you, and allowing the body and mind to start to rest. And in that place also to mention that, there is such amazing research about what this deep breathing can help with in terms of attention and focus and clarity. I work with a lot of people who use it specifically for creativity, or executive or CEOs who just want to get clear. So if we're feeling foggy, unfocused, it can really go to getting us focused and clear. Or if you just are literally just need to do this for 10 minutes before we start working on a paper, it just clears the mind a bit, helps us get into that flow state. And actually some really fantastic research going on in Trinity looking at this at deep breathing and how it affects our focus and attention. So I definitely definitely check that out if you haven't seen it. So yes, I'd love to take any questions about this portion before you move in. And of course, when we do the breath work, I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to do, what to expect. So we'll go into a little bit more of explanation of the breath work specifically. But if anyone did have any questions before we go into that, I'd love to take any questions. Yeah, anyone got anything?
I have a question, Cathy.
Yeah.
How, this may be a silly question, but how did you manage to write your thesis while living in a different country?
Oh my God.
Coming from someone who's currently writing a thesis and is in the right country.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. That was like a blur. I think I had a lot of it done before I left Dublin. But it was so, I had to leave Dublin at the time. Like I couldn't physically keep trying to write a thesis. Like I would get up in the morning and be like, oh, it's 8 o'clock. I got to stay here till 8 p.m. tonight. Right. Like I had no clue of how to break it down, how to manage it. Or I'll be like, okay, I got to get this chapter done by Friday. And like, it was just ridiculous deadlines I would give myself. I got through it because of the therapist I went to see. And I told him, I can't do this. I don't know how to put pen to paper. Every time I did, I would get so overwhelmed, I couldn't even think. And then when you're writing from that space, what you're writing is shit. Like it really is. If you're writing from panic and fear, what comes out of the pen is awful, or the keyboard. So when I would break it down, and he would help me break it down into, okay, this is a big cycle. Oh God, I got a chapter 4 done by Friday. And he would say, no, forget that. Like, just let's break it into these tiny, tiny little bits. So he would give me like these tiny little homework things to do. And I'd be like, okay. And we'd talk about why I can't get a section done. I'd start to realize, okay, I think there's something in this I'm not fundamentally understanding. So I got to spend a few days to understand that, as opposed to just trying to write. So I would break it down into really small chunks. And it is this kind of really cliche, baby steps, and all the baby steps together turned into a thesis. And I was so shocked, because at some stage I looked going, oh my God, I've got most of it done. But if I just forgot the bigger picture, because that was too stressful, and put it down to these tiny little pieces, and sometimes it was a paragraph. I'm going to write a paragraph today on this one technique, and that was it. And I get that done and I feel so good. Whereas before I would get that done, I'd feel horrible about myself, because I should have got like 5 pages done. But and then what I notice as well is my mind playing tricks on me in terms of, well, that paragraph took you a day, you're never going to finish your thesis. But then other days I would end up getting 3 pages done super easily. So our brains don't really, it tries to figure out what's going on. But in reality, sometimes you have good days writing and sometimes you have bad. So yeah, it was really tough, Martha. I struggled a lot. And I think I've literally just like blocked it out of my memory other than that.
God, well, you got it done, fair play. But I really appreciate that, Cathy. That resonates a lot.
Yeah, and for everyone who thinks that, like, I think all of us go through, I'm not sure if anyone's ever had like a really easy ride. And I think for me, knowing that everybody else is in the same boat, I think I would have preferred to know it while I was writing it than 6 months later, when everyone kept telling me, oh yeah, it was really hard. I'm like, if everyone told me at the time, I would have felt a bit better about myself.
Oh yeah, well, I have more support than you did now.
Good.
Cathy, I have a question for you from Jean. She said it's great to hear your story and thank you for sharing it. Do you find that directly helping people gives you a lot of satisfaction?
Absolutely. And that I didn't get from
you didn't get from research and academia.
Oh my gosh. And that's the thing when it comes down to like a personality thing, of why I realized when I kept beating myself up and thinking I'm not good enough, I'm not doing this, I was doing the wrong job. Like I needed to be around people, I needed to help people. And when I was just kind of, and actually what I got most joy out of was helping other students. So students that were coming through the lab and I was helping them, I'd actually really enjoyed that bit. But I'm just locked up in an office by myself trying to get a paper out, I would get back into overwhelm and panic. So yes, and I think it took me this whole journey to look back and go, yeah, like I love helping people. And I think continuously hearing people's stories who come to me is like, yeah, we're all the same. We're all in the same boat. We all have these struggles. And it helps me even now continuing to heal myself, by talking with and helping others is just so satisfying for me personally. And I know that's not for everybody, but yes, Jean, very much so.
Great. You're getting lots of thank yous and
thanks,
inspirational comments in the chats. We'll save those for you.
Thank you.
There was a question from Emma, and she's wondering, do you solely use breath work to cope with stress, or do you combine breath work, meditation, perhaps mindfulness, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Emma, all those things. And I think breath work is one tool that I was just blown away by. And why I'm blown away by it still is that when I'm doing breath work, I have insights. I have insights into, oh God, that's why I do that weird thing. That's why I'm always doing this. I'll have memories that pop up about, oh God, that's what happened. That's why I keep doing this. Like we go into this altered state. So it is on the lines of, it's trippy, like it's really trippy. It's on the lines of a hallucinogenic experience by just breathing. It's really weird, but we do have lots of insights. And that's the tool that I've had that helps me gain clarity and start to shed those layers I was talking about. Now, yes, I use lots of other things. Like I said, I've experimented with plant medicine, which has been amazing. I absolutely do meditation. Breathwork is quite intense as well. So sometimes I'll just meditate and I'll just listen to my body of what I need today. I've also, done other things like drinking cacao ceremonies or attending women's circles or anything that helps people support each other. I've also done coaching. So I've had a life coach myself and I do coaching with other people. And that is sometimes we need to talk about what's going on. So, and then we need breath work to help things come up, but sometimes we need to unpack that with someone else. So I still have a coach I go back to now and then. She's definitely more on the spiritual side of things, but I quite like that these days. So yes, all the things.
That's great, thank you. One more question I think we'll take before we let you take over with your breathwork exercise. A question from Marquetta. She's excited about her PhD studies, but has problem with coping with deadlines and it makes her anxious and overwhelmed. What is your advice on this?
I get that. I know that feeling. And what's really interesting is starting to understand what you need in place to help you figure that out. So what I learned was I'm the opposite. I need deadlines. If I don't have a deadline, nothing gets done. Whereas other people will be the absolute opposite of when a deadline starts looming, that's when they'll start to break down. Yes, so I completely understand that, even though I have the opposite problem sometimes. So things like breath work, if this is a practice that resonates with you, or meditation, are things that help us get out of our busy mind, because what's happening is just your mind is there telling you, you can't do this, you don't have enough time, whatever those stories that start happening is coming from up here, right? Like, you can do it because you've had deadlines before and you've probably either reached the deadline eventually, or even if it's a few days late, you've eventually done it. So it's not that you can't do it, it's just your mind is telling you these stories in a way to protect you, because it thinks it needs to try and protect you by telling you these things. So when we do things like breath work, like I said, sometimes meditation can be great, and absolutely try different types of meditation, see what work for you. And if you have a daily practice of some sort, what's interesting about breath work, it's something you can use now and then. Like, I don't do breath work every day. I do it a few times a week, probably max. And it's something you can come and do and just allow the body to relax, allow your nervous system to reset. And that's what's so important. So I think if you know those deadlines are looming, you start figuring out what you need to bring in. So there's something you can look up called hinging points. Hinging points are things that we need to identify in ourselves that we need to get the best work we need done. So if deadlines are an issue for you, figure out what you need to put in place. So for me, I need accountability. I actually kind of need deadlines. I need someone to want something from me to me actually do it, or else I'll kind of hum and haw about it for 3 weeks. But if you need other things in place, like you have a deadline coming up and you need to put in some meditative practices when you know that's coming, you need to start 2 weeks before that or something like that. That might be helpful. But let me know if you want to chat more about that.
That's great. Thank you, Cathy.
Sure.
I think in the interest of time, will we move on to the breathwork section? Just to make sure